This is awesome. Excellent. And I can see people. This is good. All right, cool. Hey, everybody. Aaron already introduced where I'm from. Everyone that was from Australia said something, so I'll just say, crikey. All right. So today I'm here to talk to you about validation. Now, as developers, we all love validation. We want to put as many rules on our inputs as possible. The more stuff we can put on, the more validation rules we can add to that rules array, the more comfortable we feel with users interacting with our system. The more rules we have, the more confident we are with our data integrity, and the more confident we are with our security in some cases as well, if we're using our validation rules to improve the security of our system. So in essence, the more rules, the better. We love it. Stricter rules, better rules. And then there's a problem that comes into the situation. And the problem is our users. They're trying to get things done. They're using our apps to solve a problem. And the problem they're trying to solve is definitely not validation. I don't know about anyone else, but I don't sign up to the validation service. I'm signing up to an app to solve a problem, and validation is kind of just one of those things that it seems like I have to deal with and I don't really get, but whatever. So our users are trying to get things done, and they're hitting these validation errors, and as they're kind of doing that, it starts to kind of feel like a bit of a game of Space Invaders, right? We just got to take these things out one at a time, and yeah, thanks. I hate validation. So I lied to my boss to get up here on stage. Don't tell him. I'm not actually going to do a deep dive on what precognition is or how precognition works. So I'll just give you a quick summary, which is Laravel Precognition allows you to use the validation provided by Laravel, but in the front end. And it does that over HTTP. You should go read the docs. They're pretty light. Laravel Precognition's footprint isn't big. So we're all smart people. We can work that out. So instead of talking about the what or the how, I want to talk about the why. Why do you want to use Laravel Precognition? And along the way, we're going to find out why validation really sucks up until now, in my personal opinion. So we're going to go through a journey. We're going to start with server-side validation, traditional server-side validation. We're going to add some front-end validation. We're going to hate that. We're going to add some more front-end validation. We're going to think that's okay. And then we're going to look at Laravel Precognition and see how that goes. And the whole way, it's really just a discussion of the pros and cons for the user's experience. We all know why we want to use validation, but what about the user? What do they think about validation? How do they feel using our applications? Because we put validation on every form, don't we? Yes. So we need to think about that because that is something a part of every single process where they're interacting with our system. So along the way, we've got this journey, and along the way, there's also going to be a few just standalone tips. So that's kind of what we're going to do here today. So why don't we go back to where it all started, and that is with server-side validation. So I'm just going to switch over here, and I have this, oh, no I don't. I will in a second, once I work out where my mouse is. There it is, it's zooming over the place. Here we go. All right, so there's this hot new social media. We're all loving all the new social media apps. There's this new dog-related social media that I'm definitely into. Anyone that knows me or has seen me talk, I'm there for this, all right? So everyone's just talking about their dogs on this social media. That's the one to be a part of. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this thing out. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to do this, and I'll do these ones, and I'll put my website in if I can spell it properly. Can't spell anything properly. Okay, and I'll do that. So this felt really good. Like as a user, I've come here, I've filled this out, I'm ready to jump in. I want to see pictures of everyone's dogs. And please feel free to come up and show me pictures of your dog. And now I'm going to hit register. And this is kind of an instruction I'm giving them. Now, I wouldn't say that logging in and registering are like a job to be done, but we're just going to use this as kind of an example of something that you might use in your system, a form that you've got. And we're going to see how it works, and then we're going to iterate on it through this whole process. So let's tell this application that I want to register, because that's what I'm trying to do right now. And boom. The server-side dump. We've all seen this before. We've probably all written this before. I've written this many times. And it's good in some ways. It's not great in other ways. So this is kind of what we're going to work with today. We're going to iterate on this form. We're going to work from here and see where we can improve the user's experience of this process. And we're going to kind of analyze that user experience as we go. So first thing we need to work out, though, is we need to have a baseline to be able to talk about validation and the user's experience. Because, like, what is a good user experience for validation? How do we create metrics around that to even be able to measure the thing? And I think the most important thing is, well, if a user never saw a validation error ever, tick. Like, you've nailed it. You should have my job. You should have everyone's job here. You're amazing. But that's just not the world that we live in. We have to show validation errors. So I've got a list that I've kind of put together over time of things that I feel are meaningful for validation as far as the user's experience goes. And this came from working, of course, just building apps and then working with teams. When we were kind of hacking on medical data validation, we'd work with the doctors, with users, with developers, with designers to try and work out how can we make the most strict validation but make it a good experience. And so these are just some things that I learned along the way. I've probably missed a bunch of stuff. I'm not a smart person, but this is what I've got. Accessible. Validation rules should be accessible. They should be visually accessible. That includes people with color blindness. And they should be accessible for people that do not have vision. We want to use ARIA tags. We want to make sure that everyone using our system has the ability to understand that there are validation errors. Accessibility. They should be well timed. They shouldn't be too late in the process. They shouldn't be too early in the process. They should be in that Goldilocks zone. We want them to be well timed. And we'll see examples of these as we go. Don't worry about keeping these in your head. We're going to keep coming back to them. I just want to kind of lay the land out first. They should be part of the process. We want to make sure that validation is not a step. Doesn't become a task to be done in our applications. We want to make sure that it just feels smooth. They just kind of glide through our system without hitting those validation errors. And if they do, it's like, that's fine. It's all good. It should be an expected experience. We want to make sure that we give our users an expected experience across our whole application. When unexpected things happen, remember that design fad where like the scroll hijacking and stuff, like that felt unexpected and jarring. Like, please don't do that. Unless like you're Apple and they can like nail it. But we want to give people an expected experience with validation, something they can understand. It should enable quick iteration. When you see a validation error, we want to deal with that quickly. We want to move on with life. The last thing we want to be doing is sitting there kind of, playing Space Invaders, trying to like shoot away the different validation errors. We want to iterate quickly. We want consistent value requirements. And this really just means when you've got validation on the front end and on the back end, we want to make sure those implementations are the same, right? For the particular rules. So if we've got a max length rule on the front end and back end, they should both validate maybe multi-byte string length if that's what we're doing. We need to make sure that they're implemented in the same way. We want a clear link between the error and the input. If you have to spend half your time dealing with validation just understanding that this error is for this input over here, that's not a good system. We want to make sure that it's very clear that this particular input has this error. Consistent and actionable messaging. Again, if you've got validation in two places, we want to make sure that the error message is the same if you hit it on the front end or the back end. And we want to make sure that message is actionable. That means that it tells you what is wrong so you know how to deal with it. It's just not an error occurred. So this is our list. You don't have to remember it. I will. And we're going to come back to this as we go. This is kind of the metrics, and some of these might seem the same, but you will see there are some nuances and some places where they don't quite line up. So we'll see that as we kind of look at the examples. But the first question is, how did our server-side dump go with all of these? And prepare for a Christmas tree, as J-Mac said. We've got a Christmas tree over here. All right, so we're going to leave them black when there's something that you have to do. It's not a no, it's not a yes, it's something that you manually have to take care of. You don't just get it for free and it's not completely excluded. When they're red, that's a no. We didn't achieve that. And when it's green, we did achieve that. We're happy. We tick that box. So that means accessibility is on you. You need to make that happen. You should make that happen. Okay, so that's good. We can make that happen. It's not well timed. It couldn't have been any later in the process, and it certainly could have been earlier. It wasn't part of the process. I now have this whole step in that server-side form, and I'll just come back to that for a second just to make sure we're all talking about this one. This is now a whole step I have to deal with. I was registering, now I'm not registering, I'm dealing with validation errors. It is an expected experience. I understand how validation works in this app. I hit submit, I get validation errors, I go fix something, I hit submit, validation errors change, hopefully I'm on to the next step. So I get it. It's an expected experience. It doesn't enable quick iteration. If I deal with something and then I hit submit and I haven't quite addressed it correctly, then it's going to do a request, come back, tell me that it's wrong. I can't iterate quickly. It does have consistent value requirements because everything's driven from the back end. We've only got one place doing validation, so life's good. Get that for free. A clear link between the error and the input. Now, the validation errors do say the name field, the username field, etc. But it's not clear. At first glance, now I've had this up for a while, we know what's what, but at first glance it's not clear, well, what's this validation error related to? I can't see at a glance what is wrong. I just know that everything is wrong. And we do have consistent and actionable messaging. We get that for free because the messaging is just coming from the one place. We've got one source of truth. Okay, cool. So that is the back-end validation, the server-side validation. We're going to put this in a table here. So this is one row in a table. Top is what we're doing on the front end, which in this situation is nothing. We're not doing anything in the front end. The middle is what we're doing on the back end. We've got our server-side validation. And then the bottom is our results. 3 positives, 5 negatives, and 1 do-it-yourself. So that's our results from that. So we're just going to take a quick break now, and we're going to talk about the first tip. And that is to forgive user input. I'm not a smart person, but I'm pretty sure I know what my website is, if I spelled it right. And if I come down here, if I get this mouse over here, yes, nailed it. I put, oh, the funny thing is I didn't actually spell it right, so that's even better. Let's fix that up. Here we go, and I'll register again. And it's still not happy, and it's telling me that the website field must be a valid URL. Now that's funny, because I'm pretty sure you can go to that and that's my website, but maybe I've got that wrong. So let's just see here. So I'll just copy this and paste that in. Oh, okay, interesting. That is my website. I don't understand. As a user, I don't understand. Every developer here is already thinking you need to put HTTPS or HTTP. It needs to have a scheme in front of it. But a user doesn't care what a scheme is. That doesn't mean anything to them. So how can we allow them to enter their website, which clearly works, and I'll get my mug off that screen, we don't want to see that. How can we allow them to enter that information but still pass validation? And this is about forgiving user input, allowing them to not enter the perfect input, but giving them a little bit of space to put in what we know is okay. We know how to deal with the domain, so let's think about that. What can we do? We could ping this website on the front end and on the back end, check if there's a secure version, prefix it with HTTPS, solve the problem for them. We could put HTTP in front of it. If it doesn't have HTTPS, we can kind of ping that and see if that's there. We could put a select in there, to really tell them that HTTPS is supposed to be there. And then, if they copy and pasted the scheme, we'd trim that down, right? We'd forgive that user input in the reverse. So there's lots of things we can do to solve this problem and allow the user to enter this. So we should forgive them, just like the browser forgave me for only entering the domain. So let's forgive user input. Okay, so that's our tip. So where to next? As with any problem in software development, how do we go about dealing with things these days? We're going to add more JavaScript, okay? We're going to move some validation rules from the back end into the front end, and we're going to try and improve some of those reds that we had in the last result. We want to kind of improve timing. We want to push stuff further and give it to them earlier. So let's see how we can deal with that. We're going to move stateless validation rules, and they are rules that don't involve state. State being maybe something in the database. A good example is minimum length and maximum length of a string, that it's a valid email address. Things that we can know in the browser. We're going to shift those out. We're going to put them in the browser. So let's have a look at an example of that. We'll come up to the next example, and we've got some front-end validation in place now. So I'm just going to start filling this one out. Okay, so I can't have, so I'll do this one maybe. Nope, can't, that's okay, that's fine, I'll deal with that. And then all right, and I'm hoping Jess Archer is out there because she's going to be loving this. So I haven't even finished entering my email address yet, and it's already yelling at me. It's already telling me I'm a stupid user. We've all seen this before. We all hate this. Let's not do this. But, you know, this is out there. And I'm not saying that you can never use this. You know, this is all contextual, and you're going to have different contexts to me. Maybe this is a suitable type of validation for a particular input or for your particular app. But in this situation, please, no, we don't want that. So how does this score on our list? It can be made accessible. It's not well timed. I hadn't finished entering my email address. How is that good timing? That is not good timing. No, thank you. It is now part of the process. You know, it is part of the registration process. I'm tabbing through. I'm fixing the errors as I go. It's not this whole step I've got to deal with. So things feeling good. An expected experience? Yeah, I don't like it, but I can expect it. I understand how it works. Press the button, the validation comes up. I don't like your app. Enables quick iteration. Yep, I was able to fix that username up real quick. That was great. Consistent value requirements. Got to do that yourself. Validation rules in 2 places. Need to keep those consistent. Clear link between error and input. We've kind of shifted that error under the input, so we've got a tick there. Everyone's happy. Consistent and actionable messaging, again, on you to deal with. It's also anger-inducing. I didn't add that, but it just is, you know? So here's our table. Here's where we got to. Client-side validation on the front end, server-side validation on the back end. We got 4 good ones, 2 bad ones, and 3 do-it-yourselves. Cool. All right. That's that bit. So we'll take a breath now, and we'll look at the next tip. That is to swap errors with help text. Remember, the best user experience we can give our users is to not see any validation errors. So what if instead of guiding them to the right data through validation errors and telling them that they've done something wrong, what if we shift that and instead guide them in the first place to enter the correct data so that they never hit a validation error? So as an example of this, if we come back, you remember the username, I couldn't enter an underscore, and it also had to be like less than 12 or 13 characters, and I could only work that out as I was entering my details. So why don't we just tell the user what it is they can enter here? And I get it. We want things uniform and perfect, and like this UI feels really clean. But at the end of the day, UX is always greater than UI, because UI is there to serve, and sorry, I'm using a bit of jargon here, but the UX is user experience, UI is user interface. So the interface is what we're looking at, but the experience is how I actually experience this application and hit these errors. So we want to make sure that our user interface is improving the user experience, and we're not just going with the pretty form and not thinking about how users experience this application. So always optimize for user experience, not for the UI. So we want to swap errors with help text, not in a placeholder. We don't want to use an input placeholder that kind of appears in the text input in that kind of ghost text and looks really nice again because it doesn't affect the UI. No, we're not doing that. It's not accessible. It's just not a good idea. That's not what that tool is for. Put it in the UI. So we're going to do that with our next examples. All right, so let's bring some calm. Let's bring some zen. We're going to try front-end validation again, folks, all right? Here we go. Let's do front-end validation again. And we've got our mouse. We'll go to our next example. So we're going to chill this out a little bit. We're going to be a bit nicer. We're going to allow the user to finish entering things before we validate. That'd be pretty sweet. Let's do that. So we're going to come down here, and we're going to go, oh, well, actually, you know what? I'm not allowed to enter that. So I already know I want to just enter, yep, that's good. And I want to be this. Oh, can't type. And this is my website. And oh, lovely. This just updated to forgive me for my user input. Thank you. And then if we go like this, cool. So I was able to fill out that form really smoothly. I'm feeling good about this. I'm back to the first example. I was able to just breeze through that form, feeling really good. So maybe we're moving the needle here. So let's have a look at how this scores on our list. So accessibility, up to you. You'll have to do that with all the examples, but I just want to leave it on there because it is important. We need to be dealing with that. It's well timed. I'm feeling good about this. It's showing me validation errors when it needs to show me validation errors. And sorry, I actually didn't tab out of this. There is a validation error there. So I need to, what do I need? A few more characters, an uppercase, and a number. I probably should have put some help text there as well. That would have helped. But we're not going to do that anymore because we don't want to validate passwords like that. So I was talking to Stephen, and Stephen promised me I'm allowed to say this. We're going to all go and try and push for the industry best practices for passwords and only validate a minimum length, not characters and numbers and symbols and all that kind of junk. Let's stop doing that and just do a minimum length. Let's do that. So we'll do that from now on. But you can see, yes, security. Stephen, I did it. I said security. That's Stephen's content, by the way. I have no idea what I'm doing. Cool. All right. So that's feeling good. I don't know if we finish this, but expected. I like this. I understand that I get a chance to finish. It is part of the process. Clear link between, I got all hyped up from yelling security. I've forgotten where I'm up to, but that's fine. Clear link between error and input. Things are good. We're feeling good about this. This is great. It's all green. It's all green, and we've got to handle a few things by ourselves. That's great. All right. So we've got our crappy one in the middle here. And then we've got our new calm one. We're feeling good about it. And we've got 5 positives, 0 negatives, and 4 do-it-yourselves. We're like, all we can do now is shuffle some of those ones that are in the black 4 into the green. But of course, we need some conflict in this talk, don't we? Can't just go like this. So what's the problem here? The problem here is that the result of the front-end validation, no matter what we do here, has to be the result of the client-side validation logically ANDed with the result of the server-side validation. And what I mean is if there is a negative in one of these, it has to apply to both the front end and the back end. And that's because when I come over here and actually try and register, remember I've already hit some validation errors here. I'll try and register, and I get a validation error? So you're telling me I get validation errors as I go through the form, and then I hit submit and I continue to get validation errors. Wow, I hate this. I hate this more than what we were doing before. So that sucks. Thank you. No. All right, so you get the worst of both worlds. You don't get the best of anything, basically. Which means that for our front-end version, where we added front-end validation, the only thing we've changed is a clear link between the error and the input. And to be honest, if that's all we get, I think that the server-side validation was better, because at least I saw all the errors at once. So nothing good has come from this change. So this is our table now. We started off much better, much healthier. Now we only have 1 positive, 5 negatives, and 3 do-it-yourselves. So we've moved stuff around, and we think we've done a good job. We've made things better, but like the user's experience when they hit those stateful validation rules, and that is kind of the caveat here, right? Like if you don't have stateful validation rules at all, great. Then what we had was probably perfect for you. But as soon as you have stateful validation rules, which any app that's growing and has some, has a decent user base, they're going to have to add that kind of stuff eventually. So this is the state of affairs right now. So we'll take a pause, do another tip. And that is, don't only show errors, show success messages. I don't like to be told that I'm doing something wrong. I'm a child, basically. And that doesn't make me feel good. I want to be told I did a good job, right? So now I'm not saying all users are children, but sometimes it can feel like that. But we want to make sure that we're also telling them that they've done a good job. We want to encourage them. We want to make them feel good and give them a positive experience using our applications. And this is especially true on complex inputs. Things like the password, where it's kind of hard to get right. Things where it needs to be unique in the database. That's hard to get right for a user. How do they know? They don't know. So we need to help them, and we want to tell them when they're doing a good job, and hopefully we tell them that we're doing a good job more than we tell them they're doing a negative job. Okay, so don't only show errors, show success messages. and we'll see a couple of examples of those. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a form using Laravel Precognition. And as I said, this uses Laravel's backend validation rules on the front end, and it does it over HTTP. Go check out the docs, read up about it. It's pretty cool. I hope you'll like it. But we're going to look at a form that's using that and see how it changes the user's experience. Because, you know, although I wrote the feature for Laravel, I didn't write it for you. I'm sorry, but I wrote it for your users. I wrote it for you to improve your user's experience. That's what that tool is for. So we're going to look at why it improves things and what that looks like. And you see this kind of pattern in a lot of places. Actually, while I was booking my hotel room for Nashville, I was on booking.com. And every time I filled out a form, I was making a request back to the server to do a validation on every single input, even just my name, my first name, tab, request, middle name, tab, request. So, you know, we can talk about scaling all day, but when you're the size of that doing this thing, you know, it's a great tool. So let's have a look at that. All right, let me, again, find my cursor. Where are we? Yes, here we are. All right, we're doing it. Okay, so I'm going to fill this form out, which is now going to use Laravel Precognition to validate our data as we go through. So, and I'm pressing the wrong buttons, but here we go. All right, so, okay, it can only be letters and numbers and a maximum of 12 characters. All right, so I'll do that, and I'll okay, that's been taken. It's gone and checked the database and told me that I can't use that. That's fine. I'll do, cool, success message. We've been told we've done a good job. We like that. All right, let's keep going. Laravel.com, timmacdonald.me. Cool, fixed that one. We forgave the user for that input. And then we've got password. Now, something I've done here is we've got a password strength indicator. So this is kind of a mix of a few different things. It's kind of a success message, and it's also kind of encouraging the user to enter the right data, so it's kind of help text. But there's something that I like quite a lot about this, which is we're not going to just encourage the user to enter the right data, which if we come through here and I put a password in, oh, okay, I want a fantastic password. Yeah, all right. So I was able to get a password that was okay, and I've now encouraged the user to enter better data. So have a think in your applications, how can you kind of encourage the user to give you more, to improve the data that they're sending through? Not just the minimum required data. We want to encourage them to give the best data that they can do for your applications in your context. And so that's what we've done there. So that felt really good. I'm going to go here and I'm going to tell it to register me. And what's going to happen? I'm in. I'm in. Lovely. We like that. All right. And everyone's wondering why there's a dinosaur there. Yep. Cool. We'll just bypass that. Cool. So that was using Laravel Precognition. And so let's see how that scores. So it's accessible. You can make it accessible. Look at all that green. It was well timed. It's part of the process. It was an expected experience. Every time I enter, hit tab, it validates, life's good. Yeah, we showed a little loading indicator, but that's telling the user what's happening. They know what's going on. It enables quick iteration. I was able to fix up that username to something more unique, a consistent requirements, because it's all powered by Laravel on the back end, clear link, consistent and actionable messaging. It's all green. It's all green. We like that. Well, it's, you know, except for accessibility. Do that yourselves. Cool. 7 positives, 0 negatives, 2 do-it-yourselves. That's feeling pretty good. Very happy with this. All right, and now, of course, you don't have to use precognition for everything, right? You don't have to use it to validate minimum length, maximum length. You can, but you can also have a hybrid. You can still use the front-end validation for the stateless things, the tooling that we already have that you may already be using to provide those other experiences that we saw in the middle. You can still use that and then introduce precognition to just kind of buffer out those other places where there's those more complex rules. So maybe it's just on the username, all right? And then we can still provide that good experience for the users as they're doing it. And if we take that approach, the only things we have to manually take care of are making sure that the implementations of the rules are the same on the front and the back, and that the messaging is consistent and actionable, which we get with Laravel. So things are feeling pretty good even with that approach. That's feeling quite nice. So here's where we end up. 5 positives, 0 negatives, and 4 do-it-yourselves. So that's why Laravel Precognition really exists, is to improve the user's experience and to take it from here, which is fine and works, but really we want to be up in that 7, 0, 2. That's where we want to be, because that's the least amount of work for us and the best outcome for our users. And so that's our journey, right? That's our journey. So I've got one more tip before I finish up, and that is to track, analyze, and act on validation errors. So we track a lot of things in our apps. We might do a lot of logging of, crucial things that are happening, what users doing what, HTTP requests that are going in and out. We do a lot of logging and track a lot of metrics to understand our applications. And that helps us guide decisions. We might even just measure what's the most popular endpoint in our application and make sure it's really optimized so that it's like the best experience for the user. But how many of us are tracking and analyzing data when it comes to validation? We're only tracking the successful stuff in a lot of cases, and we want to track those negative experiences so that we can improve on them. So what I want you to all do is have a think in your applications. How can you set up some simple tracking on an input on your form inputs to work out what are the most problematic inputs in our form? And start chipping away at those. Start improving them. Do what we did today. Start hacking on that form and thinking about how you can forgive the user's input maybe to kind of make that website easier to enter. Maybe put some help text out there to kind of guide users so they're not hitting the validation error. We want to make sure they don't see validation errors, and the only way we can do that is by tracking them, analyzing them, and acting on that data. So please, we all just want to let's consider the user experience everywhere. Even in the places we're not always thinking about. Sometimes we just set up validation and it's just like, well, validation in our app is done, right? Validation becomes just adding rules to our form request rules attributes. Like that's what it is for us developers now, but it's not. Whenever we put a rule in there, with great power comes great responsibility. We need to think about how that's going to impact the user and see what we can do to fix that up. And it's not just in your UI. The cool thing about precognition is you could use it on your API. If you've just got an API, you can now tell people to put a little precognition header in there. Again, we need to go see how precognition works, but they can then get validation from your application. You can provide a validation to third parties. You don't need to document that anymore. It just happens. They just get it and they can act on that. You can use it in terminal applications. You can use it in your mobile applications. So we want to make sure that we can provide a good user experience for validation across our whole stack. Thank you.
Yeah, nicely done.
Thank you.
I really, really like your focus on not us, but the user's experience. I think that is something unique, and I really appreciate that about you. The question is, it looks like you have absorbed a lot of the complexity on our behalf, and so you've got Vue, React, Inertia, Alpine. You've got file uploads somehow. So what was the most complicated part of building it? Because the complexity doesn't go away. You just did it instead of us.
What is React? What are you people doing? Oh my god. Honestly, I'm sure React's fine. It just didn't. My brain just didn't work it out. I was, Vue all day, every day. Love it. It works so well.
No answer could have made me happier. Honestly, that was not a setup, but no answer could have made me happier.
React melted my brain. Honestly, I had to change a whole lot. I was like, Vue's done. Alpine's looking good. We've got I could probably do a svelte one in 2 seconds, and then it was like, cool, React. It's 9 weeks. Not really, but it was just oh my gosh. Anyway. React is mind melting. So React.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much. Everybody give it up for Tim.
Thank you.